When the U.S. House Oversight and Reform Committee began investigating the Washington Commanders and the NFL in October of last year, when they started asking for documents and materials, I know that the NFL's biggest concern was to mobilize in a way that nudged the committee away from ever having a hearing. And there's a certain percentage of these investigations that ever become a hearing, and it's not a huge deal until there's a full-blown hearing. Well, guess what? There's going to be a full-blown hearing. The effort to lobby the committee away from a full-blown hearing has failed. June 22, it's happening, and 2 key invitations have been sent. They would like testimony from Commissioner Roger Goodell and Washington Commanders owner Daniel Snyder. That fell out of the sky yesterday. It was a statement that was sent out by the Oversight and Reform Committee. That is huge. That is significant. And lost in the news was the fact that they're having the hearing, because the headline was they want Goodell and Snyder. Well, presumably they would. I think they also should want Beth Wilkinson there too. That she's a pretty key piece in this. Now, she would probably invoke attorney-client privilege over and over again at the direction of the NFL and or the Commanders. But Snyder and Goodell, wow. And that is must-see TV if that happens. Now, I don't expect it's going to happen, and both the league and the Commanders said they will respond in a timely manner. And the Commanders actually said, we look forward to responding. Yeah, I'm sure you look forward. I'm sure you look forward to dealing with this public body that is ready to have a contentious hearing at which you would be grilled and forced to give any transparency about this thing that the NFL and the Commanders have successfully hidden for 11 months and a day now, because it was July 1 of last year when this all got started with no transparency. They didn't want to tell us anything about what Beth Wilkinson had learned because, as I believe, if any of that came out, it would be obvious that Daniel Snyder can't continue as the owner of the team. So
you don't think this is going to happen? You don't think this will actually go down on June 22nd? How do they wiggle out of it if they do? How does that happen?
They haven't been subpoenaed, so they don't have to be there. So it's more of a PR play for now.
Right.
Could they subpoena them? Yes, they could. I think what Congress likes to do is to not have to go that route. They want people to choose to be there. They want people to show respect for the institution. We've invited you. We've requested your attendance at this hearing. They want them to say, yes, it's part of the dance that gets done. So we'll see how much respect the league and the team will have for this. We'll see what their response is. And both institutions, the league and the team, issued statements that point out all the cooperation that they've provided, all the documents they've provided. Well, the committee would say they've been stonewalled. Just because you've given us a big stack of documents doesn't mean you've given us a stack of the documents we actually want. You've just given us a bunch of documents that, hey, we've given 400,000 documents. Well, they could be completely meaningless. We don't know what they are. But I always get nervous when someone is asked to cooperate now, if their initial response is, well, we've offered plenty of cooperation. It's almost like a setup. Like, we've done plenty. How much more do you want? We've given you all these documents. We've done everything that we're willing to do here. We've cooperated. You can't say we haven't cooperated, even though they will. We've cooperated, and, we don't see the need to expose the commissioner and or Daniel Snyder to a partisan effort to, yada, 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 talking point, whatever the case may be. But I hope they're there. I will get up early that morning to pop the popcorn if that goes down with Goodell and Snyder there to testify, because it will be compelling if it happens, which makes me think that they will be determined to not be there. Or if they're there, they will be so aggressive in invoking privileges and protections that on any good question, they're not going to give us an answer.
Are you surprised that it's Goodell's being asked to? I mean, didn't you think this was going to be just a Washington issue? It seems like
no. It's always been the Washington investigation, the things that happened there, plus how the league handled it. There's always been that other prong to it where the league brushed it under the rug. The league has the power to inject more transparency into the discussion, and they've chosen not to do so. It's always been both. And, the problem is the NFL has tried to get the Commanders to be more cooperative, and there's been infighting among them. To the extent that you can pit them against each other, there's a chance that maybe at some point Goodell just gets exasperated. And maybe he decides at the end of the day, at the prompting of some of his partners, not his partners, but the owners who employ and pay him, they come together and say, hey, this is our opportunity. Let's just have Roger go down to Congress and tell it like it is about Snyder, and maybe a groundswell emerges that just washes Snyder right out of the position and forces him to sell anyway. So there's all sorts of ways this can go. But I think it's always been both team and league. And I hope they both show up. At a minimum, I hope Goodell shows up. I can't imagine Snyder showing up without a subpoena. I can't imagine him voluntarily doing it. I'd be stunned if he does.
Wow. I mean, to me, it would be a little risky if they didn't show up, or it's just not going to look good in the court of public opinion. That would be the one thing I'd be worried about if I'm the NFL a little bit. You know, the NFL is under a little bit of a microscope right now with some of the issues like this and the Deshaun Watson thing, to where, you know, again, football's king. We know that. We love it. But there's certainly a lot of people kind of like, man, it seems like they don't have quite their ducks in a row like I expected. And, you know, there's a little more foul play or things going on like that in the league than I think people might have, you know, thought originally. So I'm just I'll be interested to see the approach as far as Goodell and what Daniel Snyder do here.
This is what they don't want. They don't want that scrutiny. They want to be able to do the things that they want to do in the best interest of business, in the best interest of maximizing profit and running things the way they want. They abhor the idea of any external party exercising oversight of the league. They always resist that. So, yeah, they've got to hate this. I mean, here's Roger Goodell. He's going to shut down and go to his house in wherever, you know, it's summertime, New Hampshire or something like that. And nope, Roger, sorry. Not that I feel bad for the guy that's making $64 million a year, but sorry, you don't get to shut it down in June. You're going to be preparing to go to Capitol Hill and testify to the congressional committee. And you know how these things go. What happens is it will go from member to member, and it'll be a Democrat who grills him mercilessly for 5 minutes, and then it'll be a Republican who makes it about everything but why they're there. And I'm sorry, but that's just the way it is. The Democrats are in power. They are far more likely to be aggressive with the NFL and with the Commanders. And again, it is politicized on both sides. And you'll see political theatrics on both sides. And Goodell and Snyder are going to be caught in the gears of it. And Goodell's not going to want to do that. And it's going to be 5 minutes of just sitting there and hearing things that you like to hear because the member of Congress isn't coming after you aggressively, and then 5 minutes of being aggressively grilled by somebody else. And again, must-see TV. Set your DVRs or whatever you use now to record your shows. Watch it live if you can. It's going to be awesome if it happens. And between now and then, there's going to be plenty of drama, Chris, as to what they decide to do, what explanation they give. But you're right, it is risky to not show up. The last time they did this, 2009, that I recall, I'm sure it's happened since then, it was Goodell and DeMaurice Smith when Congress said, we want to get to the bottom of what you're doing or not doing about head injuries. And that was the hearing in October of 2009 that forced the league to wake up and take care of the issue with concussions. That was the spark that prompted all the changes that have gone on for the past 13 years. Once Congress started sniffing around in the NFL's backyard, the NFL realized, we better clean this up or they're going to do it for us, and we're not going to like how they do it.
Yeah, well, that's where, like, it kind of is funny because this is where I was just about to go. You actually lead me perfectly there. I wonder how much they regret right now going, I wish we were a little more aggressive in cleaning up this Washington thing and maybe not, trying to kind of have it both ways where we're like, yeah, we're doing an investigation, but we're going to make Daniel Snyder happy too and not piss him off that much. It kind of seems like they wanted it both ways a little there. And now, yeah, oh, crap, yep, the House Committee wants to talk to you now. I got to think the NFL has a little regret on how maybe they handled this situation with the Commanders.
That whole game, that whole ruse, the report landing on Thursday, July 1, as we entered into what was a de facto 4-day 4th of July weekend because people were off the second Friday, third and fourth were the weekend. People were off the 5th on the Monday. 5 days later, it had been forgotten. It was gone. It was erased. And I remember when it all landed thinking, wait a minute, they're not going to, where's the report? Where's the Ted Wells report? Where's the chapter and verse details of what Beth Wilkinson found? She investigated for 10 months. What did she find? What were the allegations? What were the conclusions? What are her recommendations? None of it was put in writing. As 106.7 The Fan reported last year, and as we confirmed back in February, it wasn't put in writing, because if it would have been put in writing, one of the things that was in writing would have been, I recommend that Daniel Snyder be forced to sell the team. That's how bad it was. So they got away with it. Let's remember that side of it too. It worked. It worked until somebody weaponized a sliver of the emails to take out John Gruden. That's the ultimate irony.
I know.
Of the John Gruden takedown. If they had never done that, there never would have been a reason to pivot back to what in the hell happened last July. So, yeah, in hindsight, bad strategy. Whoever the chief strategy officer is at 345 Park Avenue, bad strategy, but only because somebody leaked those Gruden emails. That's what blew this whole thing up. And that's why, even though the commissioner downplayed it last week, because what's he going to say? Yeah, you know what? All the owners are talking about. How the hell do we get rid of Daniel Snyder? He's not going to admit to that. But that's why there is this groundswell, because he's causing these problems. He's causing this scrutiny. He's causing these difficulties in how they do business. He's making them all look bad.
Right.
He's making them all look bad. If you've got a group of friends and one of your friends is making the rest of the guys look bad, what happens? That guy's out. He's gone. He's making us all look bad. You're gone. Sorry, we can't hang out with you anymore. We're not going to text you anymore. We're not going to call you anymore. We're not going to invite you over anymore. You're out because you're making us all look bad. Snyder is making them all look bad, and I think they're all getting to the point where they've had enough of it.
Yeah, that's where it's a little bit of a slippery slope, because the subject is not that far off from the Deshaun Watson thing, too. It's workplace misconduct. It's the mistreatment of women, and that's going on with the Deshaun Watson case, too, to where you tie it all together. That's where I just go, man, I don't know. The NFL, they're going to avoid this testimony and not answer some of these questions head on. I think it's going to make them look a little worse in some ways, but maybe you just take that lump, like you said, and hope it goes away, which they seem to usually have a good feel for that. So that'll be interesting to see how they approach it.
Excellent point, too. We need to take a break. But if and when the commissioner shows up for this hearing, you don't know what the questions are going to be. He could get grilled about how he has handled Deshaun Watson.
Yeah.
He could get grilled about anything that falls under this broader umbrella of misbehavior, misconduct, anything that even remotely ties back to why they're there. And I'd like to think by June 22, we'll know something about Deshaun Watson. But, here's where it's also going to be a problem for Roger Goodell. And we've talked about this a few times recently. When you're in a press conference setting, you get a question, you say whatever you want in response, and then it moves on to the next reporter who's got a completely different question. That's how it works 95% of the time. When you got 5 minutes and you ask him a question, he gives you a non-answer. The next question is, sir, you did not answer my question. This is my question. Will you please answer it? That's not what you get at a press conference. That is what Roger Goodell is going to get on Capitol Hill. So popcorn ready, not yet because it gets stale. Popcorn will be ready. We'll be off. Oh, shoot. We'll be off that day.
Well, you'll be able to write lots of articles. You'll be able to write lots of articles. Don't call me. I'll be off. Don't ask me for anything.
I will. Also, all I got to do is press a button, and I can talk for 4 or 5 minutes or however long I want, and put the video on PFT. So we'll be doing that. We will cover it every way we can when it happens, and it is going to be memorable. Whatever goes down, it should be a very interesting day on Capitol Hill.
Hi, I'm Mike Tirico, and thanks for watching. Make sure to hit subscribe for the latest news and highlights from NBC Sports.